Good morning, Vietnam. What's going on, everybody? We are live on a special morning edition, and we've got a couple of friends here. We got Clover Tap from Texas. What's going on, Clover? How you doing?
Hey, excited for this one. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, and like I said, this is a special report and live from behind German lines. We have our special correspondent over at the IWA Outdoor Classics, Rob Pincus. What's going on, Rob?
Hey, good to see you guys. And it's 3:42, which means it's almost late as far as not having any alcoholic beverages. But we are at IWA, the European version of SHOT Show. You know, we talked about SHOT Show, I don't know, like a month ago.
Right.
Maybe 5 weeks ago, we talked about kind of going into that, what that's all about. And like I said, you know, hey, we should do a show about what goes on at the European version. And because of this new product launch and you guys being interested in it, I'm glad this was able to all come together early morning in the U.S., late afternoon here. But here we are.
Yeah, and it's awesome. You know, a couple nights ago, you had sent maybe some information about a gun that you're working with over there, and it's pretty amazing. It's a multi-caliber pistol over there. We'll get into that in a second, but I want people to understand that may not have heard of IWA, and it's kind of a SHOT Show of Europe. So if you've been to SHOT Show over here, guys, it's kind of a SHOT Show over there. But Rob, can you explain to us that haven't been there the size, maybe of how many companies are there and the people? What kind of comparison to SHOT?
My guess is like the footprint of the show is probably 60 to 70% of the footprint of SHOT Show. But there are as a percentage basis, there are many larger booths here. So the distributors, they may be 70% of the size of the footprint, but it might only be half as many exhibitors, right? Because there aren't as many small exhibitors at this show. The other thing about it, and I think we talked about this for your regular viewers, we talked about how SHOT Show has evolved over the last decade, 15 years of embracing the law enforcement and tactical community. In a way that it was not embraced 20 years ago, you know, when I first started going 25 years ago. And IWA has done that as well, but what they've done is they have not added a law enforcement tactical to the main show, which is still much more traditional than our SHOT Show currently is, as far as hunting and, you know, the clothing that goes along with the hunting and all that kind of stuff. We have instead here added 2 days before the main show that is exclusively law enforcement tactical called Enforce Tech. And that's where you'll see still a lot of the smaller booths, a lot of the maybe younger companies that are more involved in that military law enforcement tactical market, which I know a lot of people are surprised to hear exists on the consumer side here in Europe. But, you know, I always tell people in Europe, the countries really are very much like our states in terms of their gun laws. So there may not be any states over here or there may not be any countries over here that are like Arizona level gun freedom, but there's a lot of them that are more than New Jersey. You know, so in Czech Republic you can carry a gun. Italy you can carry a gun. Germany you can own guns. I'm talking about handguns, SBRs. In the UK, people imagine, well, you can't have handguns. Well, in the 6 counties of Northern Ireland, the Isle of Man, you can still have carry permits. Suppressors it's almost considered wrong if you don't have a suppressor.
Exactly. There's a lot of ranges that I know of in Europe that if you don't have a suppressor, you can't shoot at the range, period.
Yeah. When I've hunted in the UK, I was in an area where we had to use a suppressor on the centerfire gun, the rifle. So it really is, it's as complex over here as it is in the US. Generally, yes, guns are harder to own. They don't have the Second Amendment, all that. But there's a huge gun industry and gun community all across Europe. And this really is a worldwide show. So we have, you know, just like SHOT Show, we have people from Asia, people from Africa, people from the Middle East. You know, everybody's here.
You know, it's kind of interesting because I was going to ask you a quick question about, you know, when Glock's over here, yes, there are in the U.S., but they're an Austrian company. You've got HK that's German. You've got Walther that's German. These massive international companies that have a huge presence over here. Are they the same rock stars over there as they are over here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so take whatever, like when you walk into Glock's booth or SIG's booth, it's impressive at SHOT Show. But now add 30% to 50% of that space because they're homes. They have to own it here. You know, I mean, they have the booths here are even more well developed and even more sort of. I mean, they're little mini villages. They're buildings. They're 2 stories tall. They've got offices, then upstairs, downstairs. It's really amazing what they do here. Even where I am, FK BRNO, which is a relatively young company based in the Czech Republic. we've got what would be considered a very large booth by SHOT Show standards, and it's a medium-sized booth here with three separate enclosed office spaces, and a giant screen playing video and display cases. And we probably have 12 people working the booth, but it's still not considered a large booth by US standards.
Now you bring up FK BRNO, and a couple nights ago, you sent me and Clover some information on a gun that you're working with over there, and it's a multi-caliber chambered pistol. It's a really awesome pistol. I think it's probably very modular to where maybe it was designed for military and police and all that. Can you kind of go in as to the release and all that, and tell the people out there about this gun, because I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, so the gun over my shoulder, the original gun, the field pistol, has gotten a lot of attention on the internet. It's a very limited release pistol. It's essentially going to become a collector's item, and it was a gun that was built to fulfill a sort of a passion or a mission that the founder of FK BRNO had, in terms of developing a very specific tool. And the tool in his head was based on some of his experiences professionally in the Middle East, where he believed that what protective services, particularly executive protection agents, dignitary protection, needed to have a compact, concealable, carryable pistol or rifle or PDW or something that they could reasonably use from concealment or inside of a vehicle to respond to an ambush that was 50 to 100, 150 meters away with a rifle-based ambush. That was like an AK-47-based ambush. And the way to do that was to replicate the terminal ballistics and deliver it in a package that you could deliver the bullet 100 meters away and expect to terminate the threat. So the round was actually developed first. The 7.5 bottleneck cartridge, the FK 7.5 FK. This is a 95 grain bullet, basically. It can go up to 125 grains, and it's moving out of a 6-inch barrel at 2,100 feet per second.
Hot little round.
Yeah, the 5-inch barrel guns are moving at about 2,000 feet per second. And the interesting thing is, because of the design of the bullet and the whole everything, the shape, the weight, this bullet is still moving at over 1,500 feet per second at 100 meters, and it's moving at over 1,100 feet, so it's still supersonic at 150 meters. So this has rifle-style terminal ballistics out to 150 meters, and it does. People can see the videos at the FK BRNO YouTube channel. When you shoot this into gel, when you shoot it through skin, you shoot it through into black torsos and things like that, at 100 meters, this looks like an AK-47 round in the body at 100 meters. Now, this is a machined copper bullet, hollow point. There's a conical bullet also. There's and obviously in the U.S. we need to make them out of copper. They can be made out of brass also for international and military law enforcement use. And people can imagine what this bullet's going to do in those configurations as far as armor and things like that. So the gun itself, this field pistol, was basically a hand-built Uber CZ75 with a unique recoil system. It's a recoil system that FK BRNO does own the patent to in the U.S. There was a little bit of a fight over that patent last year, but FK BRNO does own that patent and was successful in defending their right to that lowered recoil system. This is a $7,500 gun, and much fun has been made of the fact that they have a $7,500 gun with proprietary ammunition, which is also expensive and relatively unique source. You have to kind of get it from them. And a lot of people have said, well, that's an interesting novelty, but it's not really useful. It's not really practical. And the guy who buys that is the same guy who buys a Bugatti. It's not even a high-end Corvette. I mean, it's the Bugatti of
right.
Him. I get it. So what are the three complaints? The three complaints are it's super crazy expensive. It's really more power than people generally think they need in the average type gun. And people are worried about the ammo being available. So enter the PSD. The PSD is the new gun that we're launching. I've been involved as a consultant in some of the fine points, I guess you could say, of exactly what this gun is going to be. The intention was always to have a polymer version of the gun, but essentially just a polymer version of the field pistol only answers potentially the cost issue. It doesn't necessarily answer the rest of the issues. So what this is now is a multi-caliber polymer frame gun. It's a drop-in barrel conversion to 10mm auto and 9mm NATO. And that's really the story here. The story is you can now own the capabilities of the 7.5 in a polymer frame gun with a drop-in barrel and shoot 9mm NATO, 9mm plus P, 9mm plus P plus all day long. And what that means for the average sport shooter is an incredibly well-built gun that is heavy and designed to handle the recoil of the 7.5, which means shooting a 9mm out of this is like shooting a 22. People will see the videos we released today. You can maybe post a link to the video later. I'm not world class fast, but shooting 9mm out of this makes me look world class fast. And unlike some world class, people on the internet, I didn't speed the videos up. So it's fast. Shooting a 7, there's actually a slow motion of me shooting a 3-round burst out of this gun with the 7.5. Showing how you can manage recoil and how fast the gun can be shot even with the full power loads. So if someone's looking for a gun for steel shooting, action shooting, competition shooting, throw the 9mm in there, and this gun is really amazing from a sports shooting standpoint. For the law enforcement military professional, they get now the capability potentially of the 7.5 in the gun, but they can put the 9mm barrel in and do 90% of their training with the 9mm round that's already in their inventory, right? In fact, in Germany, because of the way the rules work here, the gun is going to be sold as a 9mm with a conversion to 7.5 because their rule, you can only have a conversion barrel to a smaller diameter. So is it overbuilt for a 9mm? Yeah. Does it make the 9mm incredibly easy and fast to shoot in a competition environment or any other environment? Absolutely. The 10mm auto just kind of fills that middle ground niche. It gives you a powerful alternative to the 9 that's more commonly available, and again, potentially for hunting and other applications, bowling, pin competition, whatever you want to do as far as that goes. The polymer gun is, they're all cut for red dots. They come with the slide plate with the red dot on it. They have standard sights or a ghost ring sight option. It's different from the ghost ring on the field pistol. It's a much larger front sight, more intended for combative defensive use. It is a single action gun. It's a CZ75 type, Temfolio type trigger system, safety, ergonomics, all of that. Did I say the price point yet?
You said on the other one, but not on this one. None of the polymer. You did not.
That's the thing. Yeah, the pistol, 2 barrels, 2 magazines for the 9mm, 2 magazines for the 7.5 is all going to be MSRP about $2,000.
Really?
Yeah. So it's not knowing what the distributor cost is going to be in the U.S. It won't surprise me to see these selling for $1,950, $1,990, whatever.
You're getting 2 guns basically for that.
And you're getting the capability of a gun that the only other way you were going to get the capability of that 7.5 was to spend $7,500, and you get this incredibly fun and fast shooting 9mm to go with it. Again, it comes with the red dot option, or the stock attachment is kind of cool. Now the U.S. guns, obviously, if you put the stock attachment on there, you're going to end up with a SBR. So I'm working with them to change this to another configuration that you could imagine putting a strap on and have as a stabilizing brace. For the European guns, for the international guns, this mounts quickly and easily and becomes a stabilizing brace that comes up against the body, but it can't attach to the arm. So if you imagine this reversed with a strap and curved the right way, then the ATF may very well agree with us that this is a stabilizing brace, and that sort of changes the game for the magwell attachment, because the European spec guns all utilize that, as well as would any military or law enforcement gun. So from a military law enforcement specialty use, essentially you end up with a primary capability and a secondary gun as far as the terminal ballistics of that 7.5 round. From an executive protection standpoint, especially around the world in a very high risk environment, not the average security position. And one of the big complaints about the original gun was there weren't a lot of holsters developed for it because it was such a low circulation and low number of ever intended to be made. There's been about 1,000 have been made, and right now all production is focused on this gun. So the holster development and accessory development, of course, wasn't something that was prioritized. Holsters, obviously, this is an inside the waistband appendix carry. I've seen 5 different holsters over here in Europe already made for this gun. And we've also got a rail version, obviously, that's going to be available as well. You can see these little cutouts. The original idea was to sort of go with an adapter that would put a rail capability on it, but that gave you a really kind of bulky situation. So The frame has been reworked. I actually have a 3D printed version here. We'll have the test versions from the actual polymer in about 2 weeks for the integrated Picatinny rail for accessories.
Awesome. Before we move on, you've got a fan out there. Pedro Juan Torres wanted to say hello. He's a fan of yours and says thank you for your service as a police officer. And so I have not seen Pedro Juan, so welcome to the channel. And he wanted to say hello to you, Rob. Clover, you got anything or questions about the gunner thing for Rob?
I do. I've got two. First of all, good morning, Rob.
Morning, buddy.
Good evening for you.
Yeah.
I'm curious of a couple things. First of all, on the weight, what type of weight did they cut from the metal version to the poly? Do you know?
You know what? I should probably know what that number is. I don't. I'll tell you that when you pick the two guns up, you can tell the difference. So the 7.5 gun looks big in comparison to, I don't know, a Glock 19. This gun looks big compared to a Glock 19. When you set it down, one of the things that's deceiving is because it's got the CZ style internal, rail attachment, the way the slide sits inside the frame. A lot of people were thrown off by how big this area is, right? This plastic area underneath the slide, because it is a lot bigger than it would be like on a Glock or an M&P. The problem is they don't also factor in how small the area of the slide is above the frame. So all things together, it's really, I mean, people look at this and are like, oh, is that, Mark 23 SOCOM? This looks diminutive next to a Mark 23, right? It's really not as big as it looks to the American eyes because of that internal situation with the rails. The other thing that people don't understand is when you compare, this is a 95 grain bullet. So when you compare this polymer gun to like a Glock 21, put 14 rounds of 230 grain 45 next to 16 rounds or 17 rounds of the 95 grain. Well, literally those bullets weigh 2.5 times as much as these do, right? So if it's 2.5 times as heavy and you only get 1 or 2 extra rounds of this caliber versus the 45, when you have a loaded gun, a loaded PSD next to a loaded Glock 23, there's virtually no difference. And a lot of you don't factor that in. So empty, this gun is heavier, but loaded, the 45 is going to be much heavier. And even 147 grain 9mm, so 18 147 grains versus 18 or 16 of the 95 grains, you end up in that same kind of math, where all of a sudden the extra weight of the bullet is going to be the thing that affects the weight of the gun more than anything else. A lot of the weight of this is built into the recoil system that moves with the slide, that of course keeps that energy low and makes sure that it keeps that barrel from tipping up. People see how that works, and you've probably seen the breakaways online. A lot has been made of that, like, well, yeah, it has a giant barrel weight. Of course you can handle the 7.5, but it's not just a barrel weight in the sense of a big heavy piece of metal here. It's actually a reciprocating weight that moves with the slide that keeps the balance of the gun very flat instead of letting it rise up like you would have when all the mass is up above your hand. So it's a recoil attenuating system that is very different from just, oh, let's make the gun heavy. Making the gun heavy back here with a bunch of 45 rounds and having a no weight out here actually makes the gun more likely to do this under recoil. Whereas this has a system designed to keep the weight out in front of you, moving back into the hand and kind of working as a cantilever almost, a counterweight to what's going on with the slide normally leveraging above the hand. So it's a pretty cool system. I've always been, everybody knows, like I'm not a fan of single action guns for most use, but the reality is to control the power of the 7.5, this kind of a gun is necessary. I couldn't take a PD-10 polymer gun and just make it a little bigger and throw a round that has a SAMI pressure of over 50,000 in the standard spec, and they tested at 70,000 PSI. A standard polymer gun just isn't going to handle that striker fired polymer gun. So that's why this system, but I've been a fan of this round, I've been a fan of the gun, I'm a fan of the company for a few years now. So when they asked me to come in and consult with them on taking this gun in this configuration and how to make it as marketable, as useful, as interesting to both the American consumer market and the law enforcement military personal security market, I was really excited to be involved in it. So it's been a fun project to work on, and I'm really proud of the gun and what they've done.
Well, I would imagine if you had to the ballistics of that 7.5, and if you had a double action trigger, let's say anywhere from 10 to 12 pound pull, that's gonna be a difficult shot for a lot of people to handle. An 11, 12 pound pull with that kind of power leaving that muzzle, that would be an interesting double action gun.
It really, I mean, obviously, if you had a double action, single action gun, the recoil isn't going to have any. The first shot is going to be the first shot. I think
right.
When I tell people you can hit a man-sized steel target at 100 meters with the butterfly sights that come on the field pistol, or certainly with the red dot, I think a lot of people are sort of skeptical. I see them. I don't know, maybe I've had a dozen, 15 people come out on the range and do it, and whether it's been in Florida or been out here somewhere, and people are kind of surprised how easy it is. Now, part of that is it's a single action crisp trigger. If we put a striker trigger in there, we put a double action trigger in, then yeah, of course that potential for precision goes away. So one of the other caveats to, wait a minute, Rob, I thought you hated guns with manual safeties. Yeah, for close quarters personal defense in the United States, for the typical law enforcement patrol response in the United States, striker fired guns all day long. But if you're asking me to take someone who, even if they're a highly trained guy, and expect them to have their long gun go down and be able to pull a pistol and actually capitalize on the capabilities of this round at 100 or 150 meters against another human being, I think we all know that without a single action trigger, I don't care how good you are, that's going to just amplify how difficult that's going to be to do. The single action trigger is really what makes applying this potential tenable. So it's
right.
Everything's a balance, right? So, and I think that's been my biggest I don't know, like internal struggle. Not like, I mean, I know I like the gun. I understand what the gun's for. In the role this gun is meant for, I think it's as well designed as it can be right now in this polymer version. But if people say, well, Rob, you're compromising your integrity because you are a striker fired guy and you've always said single action guns are just more complex and you don't need to overcomplicate the scenario. I agree. But we're not talking about shooting at 50 or 100 or 150 meters in a counter ambush, or when your rifle goes down, and actually being able to pull this out with that folding brace and not just be making noise at somebody 100 yards away with a 9mm, pop gun. It's a different role, and in that role, to me, this is no different than you telling me I'm a hypocrite because I allow safeties on ARs. It's a different thing. And that to me has been not an internal struggle, but an external struggle to explain. Because even like buddies of mine are like, I don't get it, Rob, but you're not a safety guy. Well, no, close quarters personal defense, law enforcement in the U.S. doesn't make any sense. This is a little bit different.
Yep. Now, Clover, I know you said you had another question. What you got?
Yeah, I'm curious the time and effort involved taking that 7.5 from the steel to the poly. I'm sure there was a lot of considerations with that. What kind of a process was that? Do you know?
That
Uh-oh.
I make that all work. Really, these guys, that's what they do. They're an engineering firm. I mean, in fact, my credentials don't say firearms manufacturer. They say FK BRNO Engineering. They really are a research and development firm, but they built a firearms factory and an ammunition factory to support what their engineering has come up with as the solution. Now, they're actually partnered with another company on the polymer frame, but the design of how to integrate the capability of the 7.5 round into the polymer frame, they did all that in-house. And when I asked that question, because I asked the same question, because I've known the polymer was coming for, I don't know, let's say 9-10 months, and first saw it being shot and started to understand exactly what it was going to be in August. And what I was concerned about was the durability. Well, I know enough about, with my experience with Avidity Arms, I know enough about kind of how the metal and the polymer interact and how the power of the round and the mass moving affects the polymer and how that all goes together to be concerned about it until honestly, the founder of the company kind of looked at me and like shook his head and all he said was, "You've seen our recoil system, right?" And it was like an instant duh moment. The energy is being absorbed by this recoil system, not by the gun banging into the polymer, right? So this recoil system is again slowing down the movement and sort of taming that power of the 7.5, or taming the energy coming back into the shooter and the gun itself out of that 7.5 round. And that's really what's absorbing the magic, right? The magic is happening in the recoil system. It's not something special they did with the polymer. Now, obviously, the walls here, the thicknesses are they're more than, for example, the Avidity Arms PD10, which is only built to shoot 9mm, right, or 9mm plus Ps, where we max out. So this has to be more robust, but nothing super special had to be done because it really is the recoil system, which is essentially exactly, other than some of the dimensions up front, it's the same as the one in the field pistol, because the weight up here is actually heavier than the field pistol, which a lot of people kind of shake their head at. But one of the reasons we wanted a heavier weight here at the end of the day was to make less abuse on the polymer. So between a heavier slide, which is a little bit counterintuitive, and then the same recoil system, the polymer isn't getting beat up, and the life of the gun is everything you would expect and more from a duty grade polymer pistol.
I'm answering some questions out in the chat. There's some interesting comments out there. I got a question for you on the 7.5.
Yeah.
Now you're saying out of the handgun, and I know it's a proprietary round. Out of the handgun, you're talking 2,100 feet per second.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
Out of the 6-inch barrel. So if they were able to chamber a little PCC over there in that, if it's coming at 2,100 feet per second of a 6-inch pistol barrel, I would love to see the ballistics out of the energy coming out of that round on a PCC, because I would imagine that there'd be some military or law enforcement that like to have that as a sidearm and a little PCC chamber the same. That's some serious energy coming out that round.
Yeah, so when I first saw this thing in, I don't know, I guess I first shot it in 2017. So I think I first heard about it and was talking to them about it in 2016. And that was my instinct question was, okay, that's neat, the handgun thing, and I know it's gonna be super expensive, but talk to me about a subgun or a PDW. And I will say to you, it's definitely something that's in the works. The reality is let's go back to this guy, right? So again, with the polymer, with the rail, I put the attachment on, right? I've got the red dot. I've got an attachment rail that military law enforcement use. I can put a foregrip on, and I've essentially got.
You've essentially got one, yeah.
I've essentially got a PDW with the polymer gun, but the reality is there is some energy left on the table with this. But interestingly, just because of the way the whole thing was sort of engineered to do what it was engineered to do, this will max out at about 10.5 inches. So you're not going to gain anything. In fact, we all know if like friction works, you're going to start potentially losing velocity again after about 10 inches, 10.5 inches, depending on which bullet you use. So the potential to go from 6 inches is what they have at the field pistol, 5.3 on the PSD. You could go to a 10-inch gun. Maybe the optimum configuration is going to be, an expanding stock version that comes out of a 7-inch barrel or an 8-inch barrel.
Right.
So that's going to be played with, I assure you, over the next year or so. But that was one of the first questions I asked was, I sort of looked at the handgun as potentially a little bit novelty when I really hadn't played with it, hadn't shot it, didn't understand it as much. And I thought immediately about a PDW or a subgun. And this round would be great. I mean, I'm not sure that at some point when I have like 23 minutes, if that ever happens,
yeah, good luck with that.
I would love to see an AR barrel just to play with it. Like, give me an AR barrel chamber in this, and let me just see what that feels like with a pistol brace and a 10-inch barrel, just to play with it a little bit. I think it'd be interesting. Yeah,
I think it'd be fun for like an 8.5 inch. I mean, that'd just be a blast. I think. I mean, because there's some serious energy coming out of that round. Yeah. So as far as the American market, is there a timeline of when the public may see this come out?
Optimally, I don't say optimally. The best case scenario, it's probably going to be 120 to 150 days. They're looking at delivering here in some of the countries in Europe as quickly as 60 days. The permitting process is it's actually interesting for them, including when they come over to the U.S. Once the ATF approves it, there's 2 steps, and honestly, like the way it's run with the other gun, and from what I'm familiar with some other companies, once the ATF has approved it for import, the paperwork almost always ends up going faster in the U.S. than it does over here for the export in some cases. So it could be the ATF approves it in 30 days. Of course, there was a slowdown with the shutdown in terms of processing, but let's say the ATF approves the pistol itself in 30 days. It might be another 30 days before they get export from here. But the importer is standing by and waiting, and the conversations are already happening with retailers. The retail price, the retail price on this to the U.S. Gun dealer is going to allow him to make more than he normally does on a Glock or a similar type gun, and still be in that $2,000 area. We right around $1,900 to $2,000 retail, which I think is pretty cool. I think when I look at the comments and certainly even the videos and the comments I've made, my photos with the FK BRNO, the first one, a lot of people just instantly see the price and they're like, that's ridiculous. And I totally understand that. So if you're one of the like 342,000 people that have commented on a video or Facebook by someone and said $7,500 they're crazy, or $5,000 they're crazy, or $6,000 they're crazy, just good. Assume that they heard you and they said that's why we're doing.
That's why we got this. Yeah.
Because if I personally feel like if they would have come out the gate and said $2,000, a lot of people still would have said $2,000 for what? Since the community's already sort of accepted, okay, to have this capability, I got to pay some crazy outrageous price. $2,000 for this with really two guns in one starts to seem more tenable. You know, it's not the everyday gun. It's not going to replace your Glock 19. It's not going to replace your XDS. It's not going to replace, you know, that everyday carry gun. But it's a gun that I think will serve a lot of roles. Handgun hunters, again, I think we're going to see a lot of competition. Shooters get excited about more 38 Super, 40 Smith & Wesson certainly an option. Hunters, the handgun hunters, there's no doubt. I mean, I've taken a pretty large deer at 120 meters with this, with a single shot to the torso, iron sights, put around into it, not a perfect heart shot by any stretch, a little bit back and high on the torso, but that hydrodynamic shock, because it's still a rifle bullet at 120 meters, that thing went about, I don't know, 8-10 yards and dropped, and it was done. It's a very impressive round. It's an impressive gun, and $2,000 is still a lot of money, but that's a lot of gun too.
Yeah. Now, there's a question on the chat from Scott P79 wants to know how, you know, we as consumers could justify the cost of the ammo.
Well, hold on a second. Let me figure out. Oh, there we go. Lights are back on. You know,
that's an individual thing, obviously. I mean, he's got to justify it himself.
I've got a 50 caliber Desert Eagle, right?
Right.
I probably haven't shot 100 rounds through it, and I probably haven't bought more than 4 boxes of ammo for it. And most of the time, it's when people come over, and you know, when I had a range at my house, or if I have it down in Florida, at the home-based range at Ancient City. Have you ever shot a Desert Eagle .50? No, I'd love to. Cool. Take 2 shots, high five, photo op, you're done. I owned a 50 BMG Grizzly back in the day, and I don't think I shot 100 rounds out of it myself, and it was a novelty that some friends came over and shot. I know a lot of guys that have 500 Smith & Wesson revolver, you know, the 500 Smith & Wesson revolver round. Same thing. They shoot it. It's a novelty. Go hunting one, but they let their friends shoot it. I think to a certain extent, the field pistol, especially as a collector's item, falls into that niche, right? So here's a gun. Now, this is, trust me, shooting this gun in 9mm after shooting regular single stacks and little lightweight guns. I mean, all the shooting I've done over the last month before I came over here with the Glock 48 or the 43L with the 43 grip on the Glock 48, I shoot the XDS all the time. So my whole hand and brain are calibrated to lightweight, single stack, 9mm. Like, that's what I've been spending a lot of time on before this trip. Then I shot 9mm out of this, and literally, like you saw, I have a video. I'll post it at some point. I like take the first shot and I stop, and I'm like, wow, that's ridiculous. And then I just start getting increasingly faster and faster and faster. And people see from the video we posted, it's so easy to shoot 9mm. So now go back to what I was saying. Imagine that 50 caliber Desert Eagle. This is half the weight and infinitely more comfortable of that 50 cal Desert Eagle that I've owned and shown off and put Instagram pictures of, and it's a cool part of my collection. This thing shoots an even more impressive round with an easier to shoot gun that's infinitely more ergonomic and easier to manage the recoil and everything else. Or I can also throw a 9mm in it and actually have fun shooting all day long for $100 worth of ammo. I can take it to a class. I can loan it to somebody, and they can play with it and shoot 9mm all day long out of it. You know, shooting steel, whatever, and it's just infinitely more fun and useful than the 50 caliber or the 500 Smith & Wesson revolver or the Desert Eagle. And how many tens of thousands of those guns do people own? So to answer the question, I get it. You're not going to go plinking at $1 a round. But here's a cool gun you can own for the price of those other guns that are kind of one-trick ponies. This gun gives you the hunting capability, gives you the long distance capability, gives you all the cool factor, and throw a 9mm barrel in, and it's actually a daily use range gun for fun.
Yeah. Now, Clover, I know you got a question for Rob.
Yeah, it's on that 7.5. Couple of questions actually with the with that 7.5. Is there currently anybody that's making brass or dies or things to be able to reload that you know of?
There isn't. Yeah, right now, it's all being done by the company. They do have a firm taking care of it for them in the U.S., but it's components that are manufactured by the company. Like I said, they were an ammunition company before they were a gun company because they had to develop the ammunition to meet their goals. So it's all being done by them. They're not opposed to anybody else wanting to do it. I mean, lots of, you know, how many, you know, I tell you how many 40 Smith & Wesson boxes of ammunition has Smith & Wesson, you know, made, right? Like they're on the cartridge, but everybody at 357 SIG, right? Lots of SIG does do ammo now, obviously, but at the end of the day, 357 SIG is done by all kinds of people. So the idea that this is going to be a proprietary round that's only ever manufactured by one company, that's just not real. I think the reality is there hasn't been a reason. When there were literally, you know, there's less than 1,000 guns on Earth in private hands that shoot this gun. So why would Winchester start manufacturing ammunition? Why would Starline start, you know, making brass? Because this isn't just a 10mm neck down. This is actually, the wall thickness is different. It's a different case. A lot of people look at it and they think it's just like a bottlenecked 10mm neck. That's not the case itself. That's not the case at all. But could these be made available? Absolutely. But right now, it's essentially, you know, there isn't enough demand to make it worth any of those companies' time. Now, Sierra does make a bullet that'll fit in here. They make 110 grain and 125 grain. The 110 grain is a jacketed hollow point, and the 125 grain is a full metal jacket. And those bullets are readily available, and they're, you know, a third the cost of what this, probably a fifth the cost of what this machined bullet is. So if an ammo company wanted to get into manufacturing this, or if somebody wanted to load it themselves, the brass is the next step to be made available, and I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. And obviously, the brass can be, you know, recovered if you own the gun and you buy the factory brass, you recover it, and you can get the bullets from Sierra all day long.
Now,
so you can reload them. Yeah.
That is it's not Bernan Prime. That's a standard Boxer Prime.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It was that, you know, where a lot of the people out there are saying, well, the ammunition's too high, it's not readily available. Well, with this play by them to put this particular polymer into the market and it be affordable and interchangeable and all these other things, that creates, you know, a little bit of excitement in the market, and we may see some other manufacturers come on board with it. So,
because, I mean, in 1995, when a buddy of mine came over and said, "Check out my 300 Whisper," he was hand loading that in his basement. You know?
Right, me too. Yeah.
Everybody, your brother thinks I'm not cool because I don't have a 300 blackout, because everybody's got 300 blackout. But essentially, it's the same thing, and it just took a long time for that one to get into the market. You know, that's the theory here too. Is that once I personally, you know, the company obviously like, hey, this isn't a 9mm, it's a 7.5. Make sure that the marketing, everybody knows it's a 7.5 that also shoots 9mm. It's not a 9mm gun. I get that, but if somebody wants to buy it as a 9mm gun, you better sell it to them, because I promise you, they're eventually going to buy one of these boxes and they're going to shoot it and they're going to go, wow, that's pretty cool. And it just helps grow the awareness of what the round is capable of. The other thing is, with that 7.5, with the original importers, there were a lot of issues. Some of the guys on YouTube have talked about it. There were a lot of issues with the original importer for the field pistol and getting demo guns and getting guns to ranges so people could actually get hands-on and experience it. I think you're going to see a very different approach when the gun reaches the U.S. to people having access to the polymer guns, ranges, getting the polymer guns for demos and things like that. It's going to be handled a little bit differently, and people are going to be able to shoot the gun. It may be mostly a 9 at the range, but sure. The other thing about it is that they're entering into most relationships with retailers to basically say, hey, if you're going to sell the gun, we also want you to be a dealer for the ammo, and obviously making it worth their while to be the retailer for the ammo as well. That way, theoretically, if you can buy the gun from your local gun shop, you should go to buy the ammo from your local gun shop as well.
Now, as far as the export-import side of things, are they going to set up a business here and do the import themselves, or are they going to go through another importer already? Do you know that?
Now they have an importer in Florida who's a new importer, not from the original deal with the field pistol. So they switched all their remaining inventory for the field pistol over to that guy to handle the distribution as the importer, and all of our pistols we brought through them. I do know that they're entertaining potential talks with other distributors as well. And even as we're here at this show, I've already been this morning involved in a couple meetings with some other countries about importing the gun. One of the things, for example, with the field pistol is that Switzerland, the country, has not approved the 7.5 for import yet. So because they haven't approved the 7.5 for import, there are 0 field pistols in Switzerland. This gun can be imported as a 9mm or as a 10mm into Switzerland that gets the gun into the country. And while they continue the process so now they'll have distribution, they'll have an importer, they'll have a presence there as a brand, and that gets them closer to having that round available there as well.
I would assume that maybe this gun would be utilized by the Czech military. I'm assuming that they're probably going to be pretty excited about the innovation of this, aren't they?
It's funny. It's kind of like, the U.S. military just bought, $580 million worth of SIG.
Right.
Not Wesson. So, yeah, I get the question, but nah.
Yeah. That's always irked me a little bit. How could the U.S. military not require at a U.S. made company? I mean, why are they not carrying MMPs or something? Just at least come on.
SIG has a presence. You know what I mean? Like
I know that they have a presence here, but they're not an American company. You know how it is, but
yeah, but it's been that's. I get the question, but yeah, it's not. That's not how these things work.
So let me ask you a question over there. Smith & Wesson. Let's just take Smith & Wesson. We're just talking about them, an American-based company, or Colt, or something like that. You go over to IWA in Europe. How big of a presence does the American-made guns have over there?
The majors all have a pretty good presence here. In fact, I was at a gun shop right here in Nuremberg yesterday, and they have two big main displays when you walk into the place, and one of them's Colt, and the other one's Walther. Here in Germany. So American guns are sort of coveted here. There's a mystique to them, especially like the revolvers and things like that. They have some AR versions. They have their own ARs here that we can't get in the U.S. They're pretty impressive, actually. But when it comes to handguns, there's still a lot of reverence. I mean, it's kind of the same reverence that a Colt revolver or a 1911 gets in the U.S. as a collectible, as a finely made gun. The same reputation over here. On the other hand, things like the Smith & Wesson Shield is a gun that a lot of guys really like over here as a carry gun, off-duty police, things like that. The M&P is a very popular gun with a lot of guys here.
Great.
Which is a Croatian gun, but sold by Springfield, actually is here mentally. Like when people show up to the range, they're like, "Look, I have my U.S. gun." Which is funny because in the U.S. they sort of get the asterisk on being a U.S. gun.
Correct.
People know I'm making the Avidity Arms is a U.S. made gun. We're doing that for a reason. But I've said all along, if it were costing us 25% more, we couldn't justify it, right? I'll pay 15%, for made in America. But the reality is, I'm using I drive when I was using a Toyota as a tour truck. People would say, "Oh, that'd be great. I'd have an American flag on the truck or something out of the range. Oh, why don't you buy American?" I'm like, you know what? Why don't you comment from an American-made computer or an American-made smartphone? Because, and I think really we're in a global economy, and that's very, very real. And you can kid yourself all you want about, something being American-made, but I think it's really hard if you're not like eating a piece of fruit that was grown in the garden across the street.
Right.
Everything, the oil, the parts, the raw materials, you don't know where the stuff's coming from, where it's manufactured, assembled, all this stuff. So the idea of that, national kind of pride is cool, and I think it's important. And like I said, I'll pay 15% for it, but I'm not going to pay 25% for it. And I think that's what you see around here. Like, you got to have it's got to do what you want it to do first, and then after that, you start giving that leeway to, or that preference, I guess, to your national pride or your brand allegiance or whatever it is. But I see a lot of guys over here who sort of covet the American brand because they think of, like, I mean, people think everything's Arizona, right? Like,
exactly.
I had a conversation the other day with someone, and she was, I heard everyone carries a gun in America. And I'm like, nah, everyone carries. Well, that's what I heard, and well, it's not true. It's like, well, my friend went to America, and they said everyone carries. Okay, I guess they did.
You're right. I'm wrong.
Same thing. And people in America, well, no one in Europe can have guns. Who cares what they think about guns? Well, that's not true. It's.
Yeah, my wife's Japanese, and when I met her family the first time, and they found out I'm from Texas, they say, "Oh, how many horses do you have?" I'm from Dallas. I grew up in a city. I don't have a horse. Sorry, Clover. I know you got another question. What you got, bud?
Yeah, I want to comment on that American-made thing first, and what a lot of people lose sight of with that is that the product may be made overseas, it may be made in another country. Parts of it may be made in another country, but you've got assembly, you've got distribution, you've got packaging, you've got, the retail end. You've got a lot of jobs that happen after that was built that in a lot of instances, that's American jobs.
It is. I mean, people like, now I had a BMW last year as my tour truck. So people, buy American. Again, the only plant in the world where BMW X6 and X5s are made is in South Carolina. And I think it's
correct.
Second largest plant that BMW has on the planet is in the U.S. Every X5 that I see, every X6 I see here in Europe was built in the U.S. and brought over here. So again, there's campaigning to, patriotism, and then there's real, like, logic into, there's a lot of Americans that benefit from people in America driving BMW X5s because they're a luxury item, they're well made, they're employing Americans to do it. At the same time, there are American companies that have a lot of interests overseas where they're sourcing parts. And again, we look at Springfield, right? They're buying a gun that's made in Croatia, but when it comes into the United States, I've seen their facility. I've been there. I know how many Americans they employ. And quite honestly, I know how the XD business allows them to keep making some of the M1A1 type guns that aren't as profitable. So that allows them to still make the range officer 1911, where you can't support a company the size of Springfield making the number of M1As or range officer 1911s that they sell. That polymer gun that is put together comes from overseas, but then a lot of the stuff that happens in Illinois is what allows them to be successful as an American company.
Right. Now with getting to go into a gun shop over there in Germany, that's pretty cool. I kind of envy you with that. But in doing that, do you have any idea what the average German walking into that gun shop, what they have to go through to purchase a firearm?
Yeah, Germany's pretty strict on the training requirement prior to being able to buy a gun. You have to go through a lot of training and licensing. Most people get into it through hunting traditionally. There's also sport shooting, being a member of a club, things like that, that allow you to sort of qualify to have a certain number or certain types of guns. And every country kind of has their own rules around that. In Germany, it is like you can't do defensive training in Germany as a civilian. You can't get a concealed carry permit. But I say can't. It's virtually impossible to get a concealed carry permit in Germany as a private citizen. Whereas you go into Italy, it's much more common. You go into Switzerland, it's even more common. You go into the Czech Republic or Slovakia, it's like, at one point in the last decade, I saw the numbers in the Czech Republic, 80% of gun owners could legally conceal carry. And that's far, far greater than the number of gun owners. The U.S., I think right now, even with if you give credit to all of the constitutional carry states, we're at like 33, 34 million people who can carry concealed legally in the U.S., but there's 80 to 100 million gun owners, depending on whose numbers you use. So we're somewhere between 30 and 40%, and they're like double that in the Czech Republic. Now, their number of total gun owners might be 500,000, right? But in other words, my point being, it's a strong gun culture, and there are places here in Europe where carrying a gun or training for defense or shooting competition is pretty normal. as in terms of a way of life. It's at least as normal as it is in, Virginia, or at least as normal as it is in, I don't know, pick another like mediocre gun state, Illinois, right? Michigan. It's not, again, it's not Arizona, but it's also not, New Jersey.
I got a question for you, Rob. And when you were talking earlier about the M16 / AR-15s designs over there, and for someone who's interested, and I know a lot of people, the viewers might be interested, obviously they don't have as many regulations on different types of rifles and all that over there that we might have over here in the NFA. So are there different kind of designs, or are they basically the same principle of design?
Both. There's a lot more subgun type PDW over here because they don't have NFA. So things like, foregrips, short barrels, like that's just really not even in their vernacular. Suppressors are much more common in many of the countries over here than they are in the US because they're sort of encouraged differently. And on the other hand, now Germany, you can't put a flashlight on a gun, right? Like that's not, in fact, I had to have a company bring me a inert shell of a laser light combo that doesn't have a light and doesn't have a laser that's operational in it. It's just for show for some of the pictures we're taking here of the rail model, right? The PSD with the rail. So there are different, and I know Americans who've flown over with not thinking anything about it, having a weapon mounted light sample in their checked luggage. They come in on the way out when the luggage gets checked to get on the plane. They've been pulled off the plane here in the US. I know two people particularly that's happened to, and I know somebody else, I heard about somebody else being arrested from one of the major laser companies, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago as well, because people just don't understand that's the strictness and how seriously they take that here. But the idea of the designs of the gun is mostly affected by barrel length and the foregrip and those kinds of little pieces. As far as the ARs, 10 years ago, there were at least as many really cool high-end, billet machined AR type cool designs as there were in the US. Now, US had that big spike in the market, and it's kind of coming down now. So the US kind of exploded with, after Sandy Hook, all the people making every variation of ARs, and most of the ones that survived that big boom were high-end billet, really nicely made ARs. But that was a big trend here. 10 years ago, I was seeing a lot of that here because people weren't just sort of making another forged AR or getting their upper and lower from the same place, but with a new name on the side. Like a lot of the manufacturers at that time were here in the US. So there was some, what I would consider innovation in that. Side handle chargers, ambidextrous controls. I was seeing a lot of that over here 10 years ago when it wasn't as common to see a lot of that kind of stuff in the US.
Yeah, and then you were talking earlier about 3-round bursts and all that, and that is something that most Americans that haven't been military have never experienced what a 3-round burst is. So if that's allowed in some countries in Europe, do you know about what the price point for, let's say, an AR-15 with a 3-round burst in Europe would be?
I was in the video that people will be able to see the link to. I was talking about a 3-round string of fire, just showing how fast I could shoot it manually. That was in semi-auto, not full auto. So I was talking about how controllable the gun is.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Do they allow 3-round bursts over there?
No, so it would still be considered fully automatic.
Okay. All right.
It's still a special control in
I
most
got you.
countries. I think there may be a couple countries in Central Europe or Eastern Europe where there's no difference once you have a certain level of license. In other words, once you've gotten to a certain level of permitting, you can have the full auto. But I think it's still particularly controlled in almost all of Western Europe and all the Central European countries that I've.
So they have their own sort of NFA, pretty much.
Yeah, it might be. It's usually more like no or yes. Like. So
I got you. Okay, so if it's no, there is no getting a stamp and going to spend your money and all of that. It's no, you're not having it.
It's just no. Yeah, just no. It's Massachusetts. No.
I got you. Clover, you got anything else? I know that Rob's busy as hell, but if you've got another couple of questions, maybe he'll stick around for a little bit.
I think I'm good.
All right. And I haven't seen anything else really in the chat. There's just a lot of chat going on about the price points and all of that. And I get that. 100%.
I do too. And again, you didn't see me, running around trying to defend the idea of everybody needs to have or consider how they might use a $7,500 gun. This gun, I think, is going to be a lot more useful to a lot more people for a whole bunch of different reasons. And even on the novelty, I know plenty of guys. I mean, yeah, I've been in this industry for a long time, been in the gun community for a long time. There's plenty of guys who have $2,000 worth of AR. And the AR itself and the 18 magazines they've got and the light they put on it and the other stock, and then they got it Cerakoted, and then and they've got 7 ARs. So if a guy's got 7 ARs and the one I see him posting on Instagram or the one I see him showing up to the range with, he's spent at least $2,000 on. If you're a gun guy and you're thinking, do I need an 8th AR or do I maybe want to have this cool thing?
Or a Colt Python. What would you rather have?
Well, trust me. I mean, my dad had a Colt Python. I grew up shooting a Colt Python. Unfortunately, our house was burglarized and we were out, and
no,
got stolen, or I'd have it today. But I would spend $2,000 on this long before I'd spend $3,000 on a Colt Python. And that's what I'm saying is for the gun guy that's also a shooter. The gun guy that's just a gun guy, he's going to have the Desert Eagle 50 caliber. He's going to have he's going to have the Raging Hornet, the old Taurus revolver with a 10-inch barrel that shot 22 Hornet. Like, I've got one of those because I'm a gun guy. I've got guns that are kind of novelties and kind of cool and kind of quirky. This is all of that and actually a fun gun to shoot with 9mm. So I think that. If I make no other argument for its existence than that, it has this incredibly high capability for the guy who likes guns in the U.S. market, and for what you would spend on a good AR and less than you would spend on a good AR plus all the accoutrement, you can have this kind of very unique handgun. I think that's the sales pitch, right? Everybody else is going to figure out why they want it. If I have to convince you, it's because it's cool.
Right. So how long? I know SHOT Show lasts 4 days and all that. How long is IWA, and how long are you going to be overseas? I'm sure you're probably going to be there longer than just a show.
Well, actually, I head back Tuesday, so I've been over here 2.5 days for the last 3 weeks, kind of finishing up this project and getting some work done there. I also scheduled a couple classes, so I taught in Switzerland, taught in Italy, and I'm ready to get back to the U.S. I got my training tour to start, kicking off on the 23rd down at Ancient City Shooting Range in Florida. Yeah, I've been over here a lot the last 3 weeks. The show itself is 4 days. And as I said, the law enforcement military show, which also has a lot of training involved. It's almost like the old Trexpo used to be in the U.S. for law enforcement guys that remember that show. That was that was Wednesday, Thursday. EVA starts today and then ends on Monday. I'm out of here Tuesday morning, and I'll be down in Florida by next weekend.
You always look sharp everywhere you are. I don't know. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you to hurt yourself or pull something, but I think people need to see the blue shoes.
Is there enough light? See, I got the blue belt. I got the blue tie, and I don't know if we can do this. Does that work?
Yeah, we're working. There it is. There they are.
and
socks. Nice.
And as always, medical kit, trauma kit.
There you go.
All right.
Now, that brings up one more question. I'll let you go. Sorry. But as far as carrying a tourniquet and medical training and all that, is that as big in Europe as it is over here?
No. Hell, half these guys, I can't get them to wear eye protection on the range.
Really?
It's starting to catch on. Of course, that's an Italian company, that Frog Pro, that makes that kit. They're starting to get it. But I think, I was 10 years ago, I was telling instructors they were crazy to not show the medical kit, have the medical kit out on the range. We were requiring our CFS guys to have medical kits out since 2010. We were requiring our instructors to have it and talk about it. It became trendy, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now every instructor has to be a tourniquet expert, and every instructor is wearing his IFAK and all that. Great, I'm glad that's happening. Here, they're kind of just getting to the point where I'm seeing kind of almost every instructor at least have the medical kit, know where it is. Obviously, the guys that we're certifying over here are kind of at the same standards. In Italy, I think we had 4 guys on the range wearing the exact same kit, which would be about the same as if I'm running a big class in the U.S. with our guys So yeah, it's becoming more common, but they're probably 5 years behind that trend, and where now you're almost you're not only uncool, but you're like negligent if you aren't doing that as a firearms instructor in the U.S. They aren't there yet here, but we're working on it.
Now, Tack Daddy's out there trolling. So Kevin wants to know, is it true that R. Kelly was at IWA? I want to see your reaction to that. So, we're gonna let.
Really, that he knows me well enough to know that's really just a test to see if I even know who R. Kelly is.
That's exactly what he was trying to do, to see if you knew who the hell that was.
The only reason I know is because I was watching. You can find, as long as you have a sense of humor, follow Triggerman on IG. He made a great observation about Elvis Presley moving Priscilla in when she was 14. So R. Kelly's not the first guy to do it, and there's my shot.
Jerry Lee Lewis married a 13-year-old cousin or something like that, didn't he?
Which proves that Frank Sinatra was truly the greatest American talent of the 20th century. Now we're one of those jackasses.
I'm sure he's laughing down. I'm sure he's laughing down by his pool somewhere, drinking a margarita at 9 o'clock. Well, thanks for coming on. And before you get out of here, tell people where they can find you online if they want to get more information about you and your training or whatever. And 2A org, if you want to talk about that as well.
If they're watching me live from Germany on YouTube, they can internet me.
That's true.
Pincus Rob on Instagram. I've got the YouTube. Go check out the video, 6-minute and 6-second video about the FK BRNO PSD pistol, the polymer pistol. It's on their YouTube channel. I'm sure I'll post some links. I know I think there's a story at Ammo Land. I think Soldier Systems is running one. And
I put their YouTube channel link in the chat several times, so hopefully they'll be able to click on the link.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'm out.
I appreciate you very much, and be safe. We'll see you soon. And guys, thanks for watching. Clove, that was pretty cool, wasn't it? Not only the technology to have someone live in Germany, but to bring forth a gun that may or may not be in some people's grasp as far as financially, but the innovation and the technology, the ballistics sound awesome on that 7.5 round, but it's kind of cool to sit there and see what they're looking at overseas compared to what we go through, because we don't know how the NFA and how regulations have affected how we look at guns. And over there, it's completely different. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one thing you were talking about the PDWs or the PCCs that I was thinking about on that, I was, with a brace that they offer on that thing, how, or the stock, I guess that's technically what he was showing was a stock, but
right,
how easy would it be? I mean, obviously those barrels are swappable pretty easy, because that's one of the reasons for that particular model,
right,
to put a 10 or 11-inch barrel in a kit with a and then you've got the rail on the front, right?
That's
so you would have a foregrip attachment, a longer barrel, and a stock, so you would essentially have a PCC conversion kit.
That's correct. Yeah, it's cool. It's pretty cool, and one day, I mean, I would love to. I've been to Europe several times growing up as a kid, but never as an adult. That a gun buying adult. I've been to Asia a lot, which the guns are non-existent, and at least in Japan. But I would love to get over to Italy and Germany and Switzerland and the Czech Republic and Turkey, and I know some of these countries might be volatile, to say the least, at times, but I would love just to go over there, because the mindset of their attitude towards guns are going to be probably completely different as a country as they are here. So it would be cool to, like you said, go into a German gun shop and just see what it's like. Are there the same old two or three old guys there drinking coffee? Just that's where they spend their days, just like they are here, or what? What's that like?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. Well, guys, I want to say thanks for joining us. I know it was an early morning, and for those of you that maybe got some entertainment this morning, drinking some coffee or driving to work or what have you, thanks for joining us. And it was great for Rob to come in and share a little bit about IWA, which is basically the SHOT Show of Europe, and talk about that, and obviously FK BRNO and all that. Clover, do you have anything you want to close up with or plug anything?
I'll just remind everybody of the 2A patch batch for sure.
Absolutely.
Want to do that without a doubt. So you can, I've got a video on that, of course, probably the easiest way. If you're a member over there on GunChannels, there's links all over the place. Gear Report, I think there's links even over there. I think you've got some stuff on
that one.
Instagram.
I've got a link on Instagram and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, plenty of and still got plenty of time. So a little bit less than a week, but plenty of time. And then here shortly, the Firearm Friday podcast. Of course, it's already gone out through all of your podcast platforms, but here shortly that will be releasing on all of the major video platforms. So be looking for that.
Yeah. And Ozzy makes a point that the technology could spread to other manufacturers. And that's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that there's a company that innovates and puts a lot of time and quality control and effort into a product, when it first is released, it's going to be expensive. Because remember, that gun that you buy is $7,000, but the first one was probably $1 million. I mean, honestly, it probably takes like a company to start a scratch $1 million to develop a handgun.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to understand it. And the more and more the guns come in, the prices will come down. And then more and more companies will try to replicate that and build their own version of it. And then once there's competition, prices will come down. So don't get thrown off of the price tag right away. Let the market kind of do its course, run its course and all of that. And you never know what's going to happen. But the concept and the innovation, do I see myself spending $2,000 right now? No. But I can respect the hell out of the innovation.
If I had the expendable income, after today, after what I've seen, not laying any hands on it, if I had the expendable income, right? Meaning money put away that I could do whatever I wanted with. I don't have $2,000 to do that with currently. I would be on. That's why I was saying I wouldn't buy it because I don't have. I would be as soon as we got off air. I would be on the online, placing my order. Pre-order, whatever I had to do. I think that's definitely cool. And there's people out there that are going to whine no matter what the price is.
Sure.
Well, no matter what it is, it's always too high. And I've had this with multiple firearms and multiple brands over the years that people they're going to complain regardless. They don't understand cost of production. They don't understand time involved with whatever it might be with fitting parts or and they don't understand what it costs to design stuff. I mean, if you've ever go in and build your own suppressor on a Form 1 and you'll understand what I'm talking about, because you're going to spend money on materials, you're going to jack stuff up, and you're going to have to turn around and buy more materials, and that's just the way it is. And imagine that on a large scale with something like this. And you're literally talking, you say $1 million for that first one? If you're lucky, I would say probably 5 to 10 million on that first one. Right. And meanwhile, you've got employees that they've got to feed their families, and you've got all these responsibilities as a business. So, to go from $7,500 to, hey, we've got a model for $2,000 now, and you get an extra barrel.
You're getting two guns basically for $2,000,
and you can shoot 3 different calibers through it, right?
Right.
And they've cut the price by nearly a quarter. 75% off, and then added the value of the extra calibers into it.
Right.
It's hard to complain about it. If you're still complaining at that point, then you're probably going to complain regardless.
Midnight has a great point up there. He says if it was cheap, people would bitch about it being junk and a cheap gimmick and pick apart the build quality. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Where do you find that happy medium sometimes?
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm going to get out of here, but thanks again for joining us. And, the early morning chats are kind of fun. It kind of gets the day started. We might have to think about doing that sometime. And especially when GunStreamer comes online with live, we might have to do a GunStreamer morning chat or something like that, live with GunStreamer or whatever, But, it's just one of those things where this is my first time to go live. I've been on chats with the early chat and all that before, but this is my first time to host this early. I kind of enjoyed it, and it was obviously nice for Rob to stop in for a little over an hour from Germany, and I really appreciate him. I appreciate you, Clover. Thank you, my friend. And we will see everybody soon, and be on the lookout for this Sunday. The Armed Citizen podcast could be released at noon Central on Sunday. You guys, honestly, you don't want to miss this one. This is the best that I've ever been a part of, and it's about a young man who has a a story about a red flag possibility and situation with his father getting in an accident and getting injured, and all of a sudden turns crazy, and all what he's had to deal with his guns and all that. You don't want to miss this. And I know you've got a podcast being released today, Firearm Friday. What time and who's on it this week?
We've got Win, which is one of the owners from WMD Guns, and go over there and check it out, wmdguns.com. Very, very cool ARs, AKs, pistols, the whole 9 yards. But more importantly, they've been innovators for years in the firearms coatings sector. So that's more so what we talked about, was all the different coatings and the technology and how that all has started and how it's progressed to what we see now. We see nickel boron and melanite and all this crazy stuff out there, right? We got so many options nowadays. Once upon a time, you had blue and rust blue, and that was about it. You know, you didn't even have nickel. You know, really, at one point in time. So to have all the different coatings that are out there nowadays, and we're not talking about Duracoat or Cerakote.
No,
legitimate coatings. And we go over the attributes of them and what they do as far as reducing friction and all of this other stuff, and why you would want one coating over another. So yeah, if you're interested in that sort of thing, maybe if you're looking at building an AR or something like that, be a cool podcast to listen to, give you an idea of what type of coating you would want on those parts.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to pretty much over the next couple of days. That'll be released everywhere on podcast platforms.
Yeah, it went out.
GunStreamer Full 30. I'm assuming it'll be everywhere eventually, right?
Yeah, it went out podcast. The Friday podcast goes out 6 o'clock sharp through PodBean, of course, and then from there it has to distribute. So by 7, it's usually on every podcast platform out there, and then from there, I've got to manually release it through the video platforms and stuff throughout the day, and I usually try to stagger those. But by this afternoon, it will be everywhere.
Awesome. Well, guys, go check that out. Go check out everyone that's over on GunChannels. Everyone's putting some really cool content out there. If you're not putting content out there and you want to start, it's real simple. Take your cell phone, go to the range, turn the camera on, shoot some rounds, get more proficient, and now you're a content creator. So that's all we need to have you part of the solution instead of the problem. And we will see you guys soon. Thank you so much. The next time you'll see me live will be Tuesday night at 7 Central for Tactical Tuesday. Go check out Clover's Monday Night Chat at 7 Central on Instagram, and we will see you soon. Semper Fi.